Good morning to all of you. You have already listened to first and second parts of trends in pediatrics. So today we are going to study the last part, that is part 3. So this was what we have already, we were discussing about family centered care, high technology, then atraumatic care, child oriented environment. Today we shall be learning about evidence based practice, primary nursing, case management. We shall also be studying about these three, that is cost containment, ethics in pediatric nursing, and nursing process application. Now, the sixth point here is evidence based practice. You will be learning about evidence based practice in detail because this is included in your ACN topic. So, this is in short about evidence based practice or EBP in pediatrics as a trend. So, evidence based practice is a systematic approach to problem solving using the best evidence currently available for clinical decision making. Okay. So, evidence based practice is it is a systematic approach. A problem is there, so somebody tries to solve that particular problem, and once it is solved, because it is done in a scientific way, so you have a evidence for it. So based on those evidence, so you can use those evidence for clinical decision making. Okay. So depending on the evidences what we have in relation to the present scenario, we try to use this, because I will give you an example. For example, in relation to COVID, many guidelines keeps on changing because we have evidences related to that this particular practice is not good or this medicine is not good. So or this is good or not good, all will depend on the current scenario which we are facing, and depending on whatever is the current scenario, we try to solve those problems. So evidence based practice is utilizing those findings of previous studies, and if it is applicable to the present situation, we try to apply it. So in evidence based practice, nurses need to make decisions in the best available evidence. So this can be possible for only if we are keeping ourselves abreast with the latest changes which are being taking place. Okay, so keeping in mind all those changes, then we can use those things to apply in our setup. So in pediatric clinical practice, EBN is a key strategy to improve the patient healthcare, as it provides a framework for clinical problem solving which allows the pediatric nurses to keep update with the current best evidence as their practice. Okay, so it is a very important evidence based practice is a key strategy, and this improves the healthcare. Why it improves the healthcare? Because we utilize those findings in our setup. Okay, provides a framework for clinical problem solving which allows the pediatric nurses to keep update with current best evidences and practice. For example, in earlier days, suppose if a child had IV cannula, so whenever we used to push heparin in that. Okay, so that practice is not good. Many evidences studies were there, then it was stopped. Okay, for or example, when I was a student, we used to give baby bath to each and every child. So evidences were there that this was causing hypothermia in many babies. So keeping in mind those evidences, so giving bath to all babies was stopped, and this could save lot of babies from hypothermia. So this is these are the examples how we incorporate the evidences based practice in our setup, and this will lead to improve the healthcare. Evidence based practice combines research and clinical experience. Both things are required, while also taking into account the particular patient's values to determine the best practice for a particular situation. All evidence based practice cannot be applied to all setup. We need to, even though it is based on research, this is also based on the clinical experience, but we also need to keep in mind the particular patient situation. So based on the particular patient situation, we apply those evidence based practice. So there are 5 A's of evidence based practice. First is asking a question, second is acquiring information, third is appraising the research, fourth is applying the findings, and assess the findings. First, to ask a question, because evidence based in evidence-based practice, we need to identify what is the current problem. So for that, we need to ask a question, and then when we have a particular problem, we need to have information. Then we need to find out what are the research findings, and if it is applicable, we apply those findings. And once we apply those findings, we have to assess whether this was useful for the patient or not. Okay, so these are the 5 A's of the evidence-based practice. Now, use of evidence-based practice for pediatric nurses. Pediatric nurses have the unique opportunity to become empowered and make significant difference in the patients and family. How? By continually asking questions about treatment and care. So we always need to, as pediatric nurses, whenever we are giving care to the patients, whatever care or whatever treatment we give, we need to always ask whether this care is appropriate or not, whether some improvement is required or not, and searching for and evaluating the evidence to support or refute traditional practices. So in child care, there are many traditional practices which come to force. So we need to we need to find out, or we need to search whether those traditional practices are supporting the child care, or we need to refute. So for that, we need to evaluate the evidences whether this is good or bad. Okay, for example, this colostrum was not given for many in many of the cultural situation. Colostrum was not given. So it was observed that this is not at all a good practice, because colostrum is the first immunization. It has lot many other advantages also. So once we search and evaluate the evidences, now this becomes a situation where we need to refute the traditional practices. So this traditional practices was refuted, and now we see that the use of colostrum has increased to a great extent. Still we have not reached, many of the research studies are still proving that we have not reached to the desired level. But if we compare from our previous percentages, things have improved. Then we implement the best practice and evaluate the effectiveness of the evidence as it implies to nursing practice. So once we use the evidence-based practice in our setup, we need to evaluate whether it is improving our nursing practice or not. So that is the role of the pediatric nurses. By continually asking about whatever treatments are there, then we need to gather the evidences to find out whether the current traditional practices are beneficial or is it harmful to the baby. Next, we need to, whatever is best, we need to implement that, and once we implement, we need to evaluate the effectiveness. Now, cost containment. See, the money which is required for child care, if you see the antibiotics even, so most of them are very costly. Many people cannot afford it. So the current trend is cost containment. We have to take steps so that whatever cost is there in relation to child care, so that has to be cost containment strategies needs to be planned. So many of the care which were earlier done in hospital setup now can be done in the home setup by giving basic training, and community health nurses are empowered, and in many of the abroad country, much of the care is done at home by the committed community nurses. And this is especially I'm talking in terms of terminally ill patients, where where there is no need for the parents to spend a lot of amount of money by admitting the child to the health care, especially in case of terminally ill patients. So once we think about cost containment strategies, so this will reduce the cost of hospitalization, this will reduce the mortality rate, hospital stay, and complications. This increases family satisfaction because the child is there in the family, and provides intuitive and scientific care to the child and family. So these are the utilization of the cost containment. Next is primary nursing. The system of primary nursing provides extreme commitment to the patient accountability. So in this system, it is a 24-hour responsibility and accountability by one nurse for the care of small group of patients is possible with primary nursing. Okay, so we have one nurse who is responsible for some group of patients. So what happens once one nurse is taking care of a specific group of patients. So this gives an opportunity to develop trusting relationship with the child. So we know that you must have come across pediatric children, especially who are toddlers or maybe school going child, who have the anxiety, separation anxiety, and they may be away from the family setup. So all this causes the fears of hospitalization. So it becomes difficult for a child to have a trusting relationship with the healthcare personnel. But this can be facilitated if you have a nurse who is taking care of a small group of patients, instead of having nurses who keeps on changing. So in pediatric setup, it is better to have one nurse, and this, if that same nurse is interacting with that same group of patients again and again, so this helps in trusting relationship. And once a trusting relationship is there, so this facilitates good care to the child. Now next is case management. It is an extension of primary nursing. So it is a collaborative process where assessment is there, planning, facilitation, care coordination, and evaluation. Not only this, but we have advocacy for options and services to meet individuals and families' comprehensive health needs through communication and available resources to promote quality, cost-effective outcomes. In primary nursing, we have a group of patients, and a nurse is doing whatever care is required for that particular period. But case management goes beyond even that. So here it is an extension of primary nursing. So here, apart from we in routine care, we assess, we plan, and then facilitation is also there. And in case management, there is care coordination with other related authorities. We evaluate, and the nurse will advocate for options and services which meets individuals and families' comprehensive healthcare needs. See, the child may require some services, and there may be available options. For example, the child is a case of Down syndrome. So Down syndrome child has multiple issues with related to taking care of the child. So this requires coordination of services of different personnel. Okay. So this the in case management, the nurse can advocate for available options and services, so that the child's as well as the family's comprehensive health needs are met. And this is done by communication and the available sources. And by doing this, we promote quality and cost effective outcomes. So this is case management. And case management is the ability to describe and measure outcomes for a homogeneous group of patients, improve patient satisfaction, and decrease fragmentation of care. So in case management, what we do is we describe and measure outcome. So if you have a homogeneous group of patients, what is homogeneous? These are group of patients who are having similar needs. For example, a group of juvenile diabetes patients. So this is a homogeneous group of needs. Now, once we give this case in case management, we describe and measure outcomes. What will be the outcomes if we do this type of care? So that is identified, and this improves the patient satisfaction, and this decreases fragmentation of care also. Okay. And the nurse's role in case management is to coordinate long-term care for patients. So that's why I had given you example of this juvenile diabetes mellitus. It may be a case of leukemia or any other long-term disease. Maybe a case of nephrotic syndrome, or maybe a case of thalassemia, maybe a case of sickle cell disease, where these are all long-term diseases. So the nurse's role in case management is she coordinates long-term care of patients. Okay, it's not primary nursing where we are focused only during the hospitalization, but this goes beyond the boundaries of hospitalization, and the nurse's role in the case management is she coordinates the long-term care and keeps the patient healthy and out of the hospital. She is in touch with all these patients, and whatever issues which can be solved without coming to the hospital, and by coordinating different services. So she can do this. She can schedule the surgeries. There is no need for the parents to come and take appointment. She will facilitate that. She will coordinate the doctor appointment and determine what is the best treatment for the patients. Okay. Now, what what is the next is task of nurse case managers. What do? They develop and manage the overall long-term healthcare plan for patients with chronic or serious illnesses. Okay, so if you have a patient or if you have a child with long-term illness, so the task of the nurse case manager is she has to develop a plan and over a long-term healthcare plan, not focused only to the present needs but chronic patients. They have different issues and different setups. So, for example, if you take example of sickle cell disease, the symptoms keeps on changing depend on as the age advances. Okay, so for such conditions which is long term, so we have to develop the nurse case managers, they develop the overall long term healthcare plan and book their patients doctor appointments and follow up to make sure that they keep them. Just taking an appointment is not enough. The nurse case manager, she ensures that the patient comes for the appointment, serves as a resource for the patients, offering education and guidance to patients and their families as they navigate complex medical conditions. Okay, so once you have a child maybe with a genetic disease or any other disease which is long term, so she will serve to them as a resource person so that the parents can receive her guidance or guidance of the nurse. She offers the education, and whenever so that the families they can navigate complex medical decisions. Navigate means when they pass through this complex medical decisions, whether this surgery needs to be done or not, from where they will get all those things, all these issues related to long-term care. So she will act as a resource. She acts as a liaison between the parents, patients and their insurance providers to make sure that they receive excellent healthcare care at a fair price. Not only this, a medical insurance company, she will act as a liaison so that the expenses are paid and the child receives the best possible care. Now these are the ethics. So we'll read this deal one by one. Ethics or moral philosophy is a branch of philosophy that involves systematizing, defending and recommending concept of right and wrong conduct. So this is what are ethics? It is a branch of philosophy where it involves systematizing, defending and recommending concepts of right or wrong. So what are these? First is respect of individuals' autonomy. What is autonomy? Autonomy implies that all are free to take an active and totally independent role in decision making process. Okay, so all people are empowered to take decisions of their own, so that is called as autonomy. Okay, so if all have to be empowered to take a proper decision, now for this the patient must be fully informed, understand the implications of the medical conditions and treatment, complications and outcome. So if we want that the people should take their decisions, they will be able to take decisions only if the patients are fully informed. So here, suppose if the child is not old enough, so here we will be taking care, this concept will apply to the parents, and if the child is able to grown up, then the child also can understand this situation. Suppose if it is an adolescent. Okay, so the patients must be fully informed, understand the implications of the medical condition. They should understand what are the implications. Implications means whatever disease they are suffering, what will be their future course, what are the treatment which is there, and what complications and what outcome can be there. So if they know about all these things, then they will be able to take the decision. So that is respect for individuals' autonomy. Okay, so this for a proper decision making process, the details about the disease, the future course, the complications, everything has to be explained either to the patients or to the families. Then respect of individual's competence. Now what is competence here? Competence implies the patient's level of understanding that allows him or her to weigh up the ethical issues posed by a clinical situation, assimilate these and reach a rational decision. So what it is? What is competence here? We respect the competence, individual's competence. Now what is competence here? This is patient's level of understanding. So depending on the patient's level of understanding, they will weigh the ethical issues. They will weigh the ethical issues, whether they should continue the treatment, whether they should not continue the treatment. And once once they understand the ethical issues, they will be able to assimilate this. Assimilate means, when we suppose if it is a case of Down syndrome, we teach the patients that these are the implications, these are the problems, this is the expected life expectancy, and these are the complications which can occur in future. So that this is competence is patient's level of understanding. So once we need to tell what are the implications, we need to understand what is the patient's level of understanding. I will give an example. Suppose if you have a female child who is a case of Down syndrome. So Down syndrome child cannot effectively manage the menstrual hygiene. So it is better to have a hysterectomy before before the age of menstruation. Now competences implies the patient's level of understanding. So here the parents, what is the parents' level of understanding? So once we tell whatever are the implications about Down syndrome, so they will be able to weigh up the ethical issues which are posed by this situation, that is Down syndrome, and the assimilate means bringing together all the information. Then they reach a decision whether they should continue with hysterectomy or they should not continue. So this degree of comprehension is often a problem with young children, and then this becomes a responsibility of the parents and the medical team to explore the role of competent advocates on their behalf. So when the patient is a child who cannot take decisions for himself, then the parents can take the decision on the child's behalf, and the medical team will facilitate in decision making. Third is respect beneficence. Beneficence means no harm. The medical principle of no harm. Okay, so it is a hallmark of Hippocratic oath and should apply in all cases. Medical practice frequently entails a compromise between benefit and harm, especially with regard to interventional procedure and drug therapy, but should always be biased towards benefit. Okay, so see, this is whenever we want to give any sort of treatment, our basic concept is harm should not be there. Okay, harm should not be there, and our when we weigh the consequences, suppose when we weigh the consequences, this should always be beneficial. Okay, so hence in practice it may be perfectly acceptable to embark a high risk therapy in a fully informed individual, provided there is a realistic chance of reasonable benefit. Okay, so whenever we are thinking about any treatment, we have to weigh the pros and cons, and if we think yes, the benefits are more as compared to the side effects, so what we need to do is we need to explain, and it has to be fully informed individual. Then it has to be fully informed individual, or maybe advocate, maybe the parents, we need to inform that these are the advantages and these are the side effects, and then this will facilitate in taking care of patients. For example, in sickle cell therapy, bone marrow transplantation is very, very beneficial for sickle cell disease, even though it is quite costly. But once they take bone marrow transplantation, reviews of or research findings of studies have proved that now they are sickling free. They can be free of sickling. Okay, so these so it is a high risk therapy, and if you want to do this, then it has to be fully informed. We have to explain the pros and cons in full detail, so that the parents can take a decision whether they should go for bone marrow therapy or not. Okay, then respect for the truth. Healthcare personnel should not withhold or omit information from the patient. So whatever is, whether it is good or bad, everything has to be informed. Legal issues related to Consumer Protection Act, malpractice and negligence are great challenges in all areas of nursing practice. So the truth, whatever it is, it has to be told to the patient, should not be withheld. Respect for of patients confidentiality. All patients have a right to have confidentialities. Whatever are the patient's issues, we should not express it to others unless the patient permits to do so. Okay, so however, closure of confidential information without consent may be justified in situation where failure to report may lead to greater disadvantage to the patient. Okay, all patients have the right that their information should not be disclosed to others unless and until they permit to do so. I will but in some cases, disclosure of confidential information without consent may be justified. So a very good example for this is status of HIV. So if in status of, if any person is HIV positive, so this status has to be told to the family members, because this child requires great care. So for in cases of HIV, the parent support or the family support is very, very important. For example, taking medicine. This taking medicines for HIV is for life term, and if the patient is missing the doses, so this will cause multiple problems in future. So here, even though the father may be telling ki don't disclose my HIV status to my wife, but that cannot be. But in such situation, the confidential information without consent, we will not wait for the consent, but it has to be a family decision. If the husband is having, the wife should know. If the wife is having, the husband should know, even though they may not be giving the consent, because otherwise this will be a great disadvantage to the patient. Okay, avoidance of paternalism and bias. So whenever we are taking care of the patient, we should not have any bias in the mind. So practitioners should strive to remain truly objective and avoid all personal, racial, cultural and religious and other bias while counseling and treating children. So whatever are our personal feeling towards a particular group of patients, particular race, particular family, or everything, so this has to be avoided whenever you are counseling or treating children. Personal prejudice and preconceived ideas must never influence the provision or withholding of medical care to patients, regardless whether they are disadvantaged, have a pre-existing disability, or otherwise. So whatever are your personal feelings, whenever we are taking care of the children, they should never come in between. Our personal feelings, preconceived ideas should never influence whether to provide or whether to withhold to medical care, even though they are disadvantaged, or even though they may be having a disability or otherwise. The wishes of parents and guardians must also be respected, again regardless of any personal bias. So whatever are the wishes of the parents, so they have to be respected, whether we as healthcare workers may agree to it or not. So our personal feeling should not come in as a barrier for taking care of the child. Then respect of patient next is avoidance of all conflicts of interest. The patient must always come first before any vested interest of any third party, including the physician as well as parents, guardians and extended family society. The patient always comes first. So whether the interest of the third party, maybe the physician himself, maybe the parents, guardians, extended, they all are second part, but the child is the first point of interest. Okay, so our vested interest means our personal interest in as a physician or of parents, guardians, this should not come in as a barrier for taking care of the patient. The patient has to come first, and our personal interest should not come in this. Next is justice. There are three aspects. First is legal justice, respect for right and fair distribution of resources, including the nursing time and attention. So if, a justified approach has to be there. One is legal justice. Whenever they require a law demand, if some legal advice is required, so that has to be given. We have to respect for right and fair distribution of resources. Okay, we as nurses, if the proper time has to be given, proper time and attention has to be given, and resources has to be distributed equally without, and this has to be justified. This has to be justified. So whenever we are doing a clinical care, we need to justify that the justified approach regarding whatever available resources are there, whatever numbers. So for example, if you have two nurses, so the nursing in charge should divide the two nurses with responsibilities so that care of all the patients can be managed justifiably, and not utilizing some resources to a particular group of patients and not allowing the others to use it. It should not do that. Okay, so this a justified approach has to be there. Then respect the limitations of medical care. The medical care should strive to support the patient, should be tailored to the needs of the individual, including any complications or disability. Okay, so whatever medical care has to be there, we have to support the patient, and it has to be tailored according to the need. Tailored according to the means this has to be given according to the requirement of the patient. Okay, so it is ethically appropriate to appreciate realistic goals with medical care can achieve, and wrong to aim towards exaggerated or impossible expectation. So we should keep in mind our limitations of medical care. Say we are not gods, medicine is not god. Okay, so we have to stop play god and tell what are the limitations of patient's care. For example, now suppose if you take example of COVID situation, we are telling that this particular medicine may be good for the child, but you should not never tell that this will cure 100%, because you don't have the evidence to do those, so to do so. So it is ethically appropriate to appreciate realistic goals. So you can set realistic goals that if you take this particular medicine, the fever can reduce to this extent, but don't go beyond the limitations and tell that when you know that this is not going to work. So this whatever limitations are there in the medical care, so that has to be told. Okay, don't it is wrong to aim towards exaggerated or impossible expectations. Okay, now the last part of this trends is application, nursing process application. Okay, so these are, we know what are the steps of nursing process. It based on assessment, we have a nursing diagnosis, then we plan, then we implement, and then we evaluate. These are the basic steps of the nursing process, and all the steps of nursing process has to be utilized for each and every child whenever we come across in the clinical situation. So this is a very important part which has to be practiced for each and every child. So that was all about the different trends which we have studied in 3 videos. I hope you have understood. Thank you for a patient listening.